front of that, but okay, I'll take it. Thank God for Mother Smith. Thank you. Okay, I'm here to introduce the speaker. Tempestt Sutton. Tempestt Sutton was born to Robert and Annette Anderson on September 29, 1986. Her siblings include Christopher and Aisha Henderson and adopted sister Shawty Gordon. Tempestt grew up in a Christian home and was a member of Holy Temple all of her life. She attended Trinity Christian School for 12 years, where she got her academic background as well as her knowledge of the scriptures. And I mean, they drilled those young people in the Word. My mother used to sit there and say, we'd go over her scriptures, and she had to memorize all the scriptures. And she told her, she said, Tempestt, you're going to be a missionary one day. In 2008, she was called to the ministry. She went on to Duquesne University to receive her bachelor's in sociology and psychology and a master's in criminology and social and public policy. At Duquesne, she was vice president of the New Beginnings Ministry, and I thank God for her doing that. She didn't just leave it here. She went to college, and a lot of kids forget about the Lord in college. She went to college and continued on her ministry, where she held many gatherings for young people all over the state from various colleges. There she met her husband, Alvin Sutton, and they now have 2 children, Charlie Marie and Ava Gray. She is currently the assistant director of Greater Valley. And I'm going to tell you, Tempestt, out of all of this, you can forget this part of it, she loves the Lord. That's the main thing about her. She has an infectious laugh for years, but I just thank God. That's my baby. I love her. She's not my baby. She's my little child, but I love her. She's still my baby. And I want everybody to say, God bless. God bless. Tempestt Sutton. Tempestt Sutton. Teach the word. Teach the word.
Sister Tempestt Sutton. Now we will have another selection from our mass choir. Let's receive them and say amen.
Faith
forth in the service, Lord, we ask that you bless the word that you have help to execute it effectively, Lord. And bless the hearers of the word here in the congregation and out across the broadcast. Lord, we want to send up a special prayer for all the sick and shut in, especially Pastor Greg. Give him strength, Lord, to continue to touch his body. We ask for strength for Sister Rita. Please give her strength, Lord, to continue to take care of herself as well as the man of God. Lord, we ask all these things in your name. Amen. So giving honor to God is the head of my life. It's such a blessing and honor and privilege to be in the house of God. This Sunday, Lord. I just want to, thank you for giving me the opportunity to stand before you. Lord, please keep Pastor Greg in your prayers, Lord. I ask that, he continues to, the Lord continues to heal him. I want to quickly look at Judges, but first before I reach out, I want to say God bless Mother. I didn't say God bless Mother. It's a privilege and honor to sit here today, and I definitely want to come to you when I start to get out of service. I want to thank God for everybody that participated in the service and for the beautiful flowers. I didn't know if there was going to be a color that we had today, but when she came and she said, gave me the flower, I said, oh, look at God, and I just thank you. Absolutely beautiful to our Mistress Sarah. God bless you. When I look at her, I just get encouraged. I truly get encouraged because she's young and she can be anywhere, but she gets excited about serving the Lord. So God bless you, and thank you so much. So at this time, I'd like to turn to Judges chapter 4. And we're going to read verses 1 through 10. So that Judges chapter 4, verses 1 through 10. When you have to say amen. Amen. So it reads, now Deborah, prophet, the wife of Lapidoth, was leading Israel at that time. She held court under the palm of Deborah between Ramah and Bethel in the hill country of Ephraim. And the Israelites went up to her to have their disputes decided. She went from Barak, son of Abinoam, from Kadesh, and Naphtali, and said to him, the Lord, the God of Israel, commands you, go take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Sutton, and lead them to Mount Tempestt. I will lead Sisera, commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kidron River, and give him into your hands. Barak said to her, if you go with me, I will go. But if you do not go with me, I won't go. Certainly I will go with you, said Deborah. But because of the course you are taking, the honor will not be yours. For the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman. So Deborah went with Barak to Kadesh. The Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali, 10,000 men went up to under his command. Deborah also went with him. So I apologize. I was Judges chapter 4, verses 4 through 10. So God bless the reading and the hearing of his word. Amen. So at this moment, I'm not going to ask you to turn and look to your neighbor yet. I'm going to ask you to have some self-evaluation for a moment. I want you all to ask yourself, what can someone learn from me spiritually? What can someone learn from me spiritually? So that's something to think about as we go through the message. When I was doing the memorial plaques, for those who have gone on before us, I noticed that most of the plaques were for women. And statistically, women make up the majority of the church, whether it's singing in the choir, praying, Sunday school, mission projects, taking food to the sick, or taking care of the men on the pulpit or in the church. So as I was going through, I started thinking about which each of them had contributed to me spiritually. And I thought of a story and I laughed to myself because I was thinking about Mother Margaret Thomas. We were downstairs for a repast. We used to stay in church all day. So we waited for second service. And I was running with the boys and I was ready to jump down the steps. And she said, girl, don't you jump down the steps. And I looked like, and my grandmother was sitting beside her, and I looked, I said, oh, I'm going to get it. So Sister Come, she pulled me aside, and she said, you don't do that in the house of the Lord. You have to respect the house of the Lord. And you're not a boy, you have to conduct yourself like a lady. So I looked at my grandmother, and I said, oh, she's going to have something to say. And she looked at me, she said, don't look at me, listen to her. She's trying to teach you something. And I said, okay, and these are things that I take, and I impart on my daughters. So some of God's leading ladies weren't the ones who held positions in the church. They were the ones that did not hold positions. They were faithfully loving their families, faithfully encouraging a member, faithfully drying the tears of a child, and faithfully upholding the morals and fighting for God. All through the Bible, God has chosen people that were pretty much ordinary people to get his job done as long as they were willing and obedient. So before we take a look at Deborah, I just want to go over what was going on at this time. So at this time, it was about the third apostasy, which is the great falling away from God in Israel. It was about 1200 BC. Yet again, Israel had fallen back into sin. They were committing fornication, idolatry, adultery, you name it, they were probably doing it. So, due to their sin, God allowed the Canaanites to take over, to oppress them. And in the book of Judges, you can see that throughout their cycle, that when Israel fell back into sin, he would often use unbelievers to oppress them, to bring them back on the path of righteousness. And so when they would cry out to God, "Oh Lord, help us," because at this point they're being oppressed, he would send the judge. So at this point, he sent Deborah. Deborah is an excellent example to God's people, that he can use any of us for his service. So Deborah's only mentioned in Judges chapter 4 and chapter 5. It's not much, but it's a very powerful story, and we learn a lot about her. So like many women, Deborah holds a lot of different roles. So we learn from Judges chapter 4 that she's a wife, she's a leader, she's a prophetess, she's a woman who was used by God. She described herself as the mother of Israel. Scripture tells us that Deborah was obedient and faithful to God's word, and the entire chapter 5 is dedicated to the song of Deborah. So she was singing the song about God's mighty power, so it makes it just that she was a worshiper. She was a woman that was willing to and able to offer godly encouragement through her leadership. And finally, Deborah was God's judge who used to sit under the palm of Deborah and arbitrate disagreements between the Israelites. Now, Deborah was very unique and different from all the judges for several reasons. One, there's not a single word of condemnation against Deborah in these two chapters. The Bible speaks nothing but praise for her actions and her service to God. Secondly, unlike several of the judges in the book, she wasn't called to go to the war. She wasn't called to command the army. She was called to be a judge. She did go to war with Barak, but she wasn't called to lead that army. Third, she's the only book of judges that were even close to being a judge. She's what we thought was a judge today. She would sit there and arbitrate yes or no and their disagreements. And finally, Deborah was the most unique judge because she was a woman. So during this time, well, our time, it's not plausible to have a woman in a leadership position. We have women judges. We have women in Congress. We almost had a female president. You know, some churches have a female assistant pastor or a female pastor. So this isn't implausible to us. Because in our society, we have equal rights. We have a lot of work that needs to be done, but we still have equal rights. So in this time during Israel, women were seen as nothing but merely property to men, owned by men. So how is it that this woman could be appointed into a position that was equivalent to a king? So I was trying to read different commentaries because it was interesting to me. And nobody touched on it. Well, we know she was just appointed, so take it for its word. But I think what we can see is that she was obedient. She was more than a leader. She was worthy because she was set apart from all the other things the other Israelites were doing. She wasn't sitting around committing idolatry, fornication. She wasn't having angry outbursts. She wasn't gossiping or talking about people. She wasn't manipulating people. And ladies, it seems like it's our problem when it comes to gossip. But you have to understand. Men do it too, but ladies, seem like it's more of our problem. When it comes to gossip, you may be mad in that moment. You may be trying to hurt that person. But you have to understand that that person may be hurt. They may not be hurt. But ultimately, you're hurting yourself. Because it's a sin. And any sin hinders your fellowship with God. If you don't believe me, let's go to John chapter 1, verses 3 and 6. That read, "That which we have seen and heard, we declare to you, that you may also have fellowship with us. And truly our fellowship is with the Father and with His Son Jesus Christ." And drop down to verse 6. "If we say that we have fellowship with Him and walk in darkness, we lie and we do not practice the truth." So you have to understand also that when you're walking in darkness, you're not walking in your purpose for God. So you're hurting yourself. Sin is serious. Oh, we know this. Sin is serious. And the wages of sin are death. That's in Romans 6:23. So it's costly. Amen. And there was a quote my grandma used to say, and it was, what did she say? She said, well, sin will take you further than you want to go, keep you longer than you want to stay, and cost you more than you want to pay. So sin is fellowship with God. So sin is serious, and we need to treat it as such. Because as long as we're dabbling in sin, we can't flirt with it. If we're dabbling with it, there will never be victory in our lives or in this church. So we can't play with sin. So sin cost the Israelites their freedom. They were oppressed by the Canaanite army and kept in line by King Jabin's army, which had 900 chariots of iron. So when Deborah took this commandment to Barak to take 10,000 men to fight the Canaanite army, understandably he was a little shook. So he said, I'll go. Okay, if you go. And he was looking at the numbers. I believe he was looking at the scroll and saying, what in the world is she trying to do with us? We have 10,000 men on foot. We may have our swords, we may have our shields. We're on foot. They have chariots of iron, 900. And one chariot was equivalent to 15 men on foot. So they were outnumbered. They were very outnumbered. So when to give you another illustration, that would be like America today with our tanks, our missiles, and our bombs, going against America in World War I, where they had to sit and take the little thing and pump the gun and then shoot it. While you're doing that, let me just run over you, okay? So they're thinking we're going to be slaughtered. We're going to be massacred. So I don't think what Barak didn't understand was that he was fighting for righteousness at this moment. And when you are fighting for righteousness, you have to step out on faith. And when God is with you, you can't lose. If God is with you, who can be against you? In order to have courage to go, Barak had to borrow some of Deborah's faith. So he never denied, if you look at the scripture, he never denied that he shouldn't win. He was like, okay, yeah, I should go. I know I should go. That means he might have a level of faith. There was some level of faith here. But he needed encouragement to get there. He needed somebody to help boost his faith to get there. So also look at Deborah. She never hesitated. When he asked, she said, okay, all right, I'm going to give you, this is what's going to happen, but I'll go with you. Now you can turn to your neighbor and say, neighbor, as long as I serve the Lord, I will encourage you and pour into you the word of God to increase your faith. This is how it ought. So now look at verse 10. Verse 10 reads, then Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali, and 10,000 men went up under his command. Deborah also went with him. Deborah's faith and encouragement that she poured into Barak affected 10,000 men. They had the right to say, we're not going to go. What are you doing? Amen. We're not doing it. No. 10,000 men. That faith affected 10,000 men, and they went to go fight in a battle that on paper was hopeless. But God. You have to understand, faith spreads. So does negativity, but faith spreads. We're not in that negative game. Faith spreads. At the end of the battle, you keep reading, not a single person was left in that Canaanite army. Not one. So there was a time, because I believe you can learn a little bit of something from everybody, but learn a little bit of something from Barak. There was a time in my life that I was a Barak, and I'm not ashamed to say it, because I feel like there's no pride here when it comes to things that I can improve on. So I'm built for tough. Not much bothers me. And when it does, I'm resilient. But I'm used to being a Deborah. I'm used to saying, okay, don't worry, we'll get through it. Let's pray together. I'm used to saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to pour some word in you to increase your faith. I'm used to that. So I was put in a position that I wasn't used to. I wasn't used to it at all. But thank God I had a lot of Deborahs around me. People that I've learned from spiritually, people that I can still learn from spiritually. I needed encouragement. About over 2 years ago, I was pregnant with my daughter, Ava Gray. And I was sick. I would be on the fire stand. Sometimes before I would get up there, I would have to use the bathroom. Sometimes more, I have to run off to go use the bathroom. I went to McGee several times for fluids because I was so dehydrated, because there was days I couldn't even drink water. I couldn't hold anything down. I was sick. So not only being sick, physically I took a blow. I went, they diagnosed me with hyperemesis, with this severe morning sickness. So I said, okay, we'll be able to work through it. It won't last long. It lasted the entire pregnancy without So from there, I go to the doctors and I'm hearing, your daughter's not growing. And I said, whoa, what was that again? Your daughter isn't growing, she's lagging behind. Usually, this far in the pregnancy, we have children that are between 30 and 50%, in the 30th and 50% percentile. She was in the 5th. So they had all her measurements. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, oh God. So I start taking a blow, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally. I have a lot of faith. I do have faith. But I'm human. Yeah. And as a mother, that hurts. But I had people around me that were able to encourage me. So I said, okay, here we are. So the people around me knew that I took that hit. So they start pouring into me spiritually. My father called me when he got the news. He said, you know what? You know that we don't look at these things. We have faith. We work by faith and not by sight. But he told me. I said, okay. He said, I'm praying for you and you continue to pray. The pulpit prayed for me. Elder Stewart laid his hands on my stomach. He prayed for me. Elder Gray, I went to his house and he didn't even ask me about it and talk about himself. He said, how are you? I'm praying for you. And I thought, geez. And all this man is sick. He's praying for me. Amen. That was an example of somebody I can learn from spiritually. That through my sickness, I'm able to reach out, still pray for somebody else. Yes. So then I have, I told Pastor story a few weeks ago. I said, Charlie, she has a way that God uses her to keep me alive spiritually. It was a really bad day. It was a rough day. And I sat on the bed, and this entire time I refused to cry. Because I felt like if I cry, I'm giving in. So the tears were coming. And God sent little Debbie down the steps. And she sat next to me. She was 4. And she put her hands on my stomach. And she closed her eyes. She said, Lord, please help my baby sister to grow. And we never told her anything that was going on. Because we knew she would worry. Then she stopped and she looked at me and she smiled. She said, Mommy, God said that my baby sister will grow. And she's going to be nice and strong. And I said, okay. So at that moment, I said, you know what? I have to change my perspective. I have to start praying God. Then I had, not only that, but I had the women that were in the ensemble. Every time we had practice, they would pour into me. My mother went to every single appointment with me. And she would sit there, she would pray. She would say scriptures. She would pull out the oil that was in her purse, hand it to me, and she would say, anoint yourself in your stomach. So I said, okay, I had that. Because at that moment, when I was so emotional, she would step in and she would ask questions that I just couldn't ask in that moment. So, as going to these appointments, does your daughter have this? Did your other daughter have this? What runs in his family? What runs in your family? The structures are there, but we just don't know. And I said, oh. And I took those numbers to Google. And you never search on Google if you have any type of symptoms. Google will have you made in the next hour. Never go to Google. So and I said, oh, I'm looking at the numbers. I said, these don't look too good. Like a rock. I said, they're looking at the numbers. So one day, and my family kept pouring into me, and my friends kept pouring into me. One day I go, and I'm sitting in the room before I go to my high-risk appointment. So before every high-risk appointment, I had to have a sonogram. And I'm sitting in there in the room, and my faith is filled. My cup is overflowing at this moment. And I see a girl walk out, and I hear that she's bleeding. She's far along. And I hear that she's bleeding, but she's not quite ready to give birth. So my mom says, oh, she's bleeding. And I sat there and I looked at her. And at this moment, I had my own worries. And I was also mapping out the bathroom, because I said, oh, this is not going to be good. So I sat there and I looked at her, and I took a page from Mother Gray's book, and I began to pray for her. Through all my sickness, through all my worry at that moment, I began to pray for her. I'm not sure how it turned out, but she had to pray. So after that appointment, the sonogram, we went down to the high-risk appointment. So I said, okay, sitting there, we're waiting around. The doctor comes in, and she's, hi, how you doing? She's talking, she's, I said, okay. I said, I'm feeling very hopeful right now because my cup of faith is overflowing at this moment. And she sits down in the I hear all this clicking. And I'm thinking, all right, Lord, whatever's going on, I trust you. And she goes like this. And then she looks up. And she looks at me. And then she turns, she looks at the computer. And at that moment, she said, it is rare that I have the opportunity to give somebody good news. She said, she's right on point. The right to me, the left of me. And I looked at her and the tears started coming in her eyes. She began to praise the Lord. And at this moment I'm saying, okay, you know what? My cup of faith is overflowing. I'm getting ready to pour into you. I looked at her, the doctor, and I said, we pray. We're praying people. You don't have to go present. But she was still like in amazement. We pray. So I don't know, it maybe sparked her interest. Maybe it didn't, I have no idea, but my work was done. I told her about the Lord and told her about my faith. Why did this happen? Was it a flu? What happened? So about a month later, I gave birth. And I'm sitting in recovery and I hear the nurses. And they're saying that, you know, she's trying to fill in the other nurse that was standing next to her. And she's giving her all this stuff about the birth and everything so she could care for me. And she said there was a placental abruption, an undetected placental abruption. And if you know anything about the placenta, that's what gives the baby food, nutrients, oxygen, blood. That's her lifeline. So it was undetected. With all the sonograms I had, when they looked at the placenta, did not detect that it was detaching, which is why she wasn't really growing. So I said, Lord, that was nothing but you. Because if it wasn't for the faith that people poured into me, I believe this could have went a totally different way. Because the Bible that I read in James says in the prayer that's offered up in faith, heals one that is sick. My faith was her lifeline. So I had people that encouraged me. I had people that I could look to spiritually. You know, people I could learn from. And I believe when Barack looked at Deborah, I believe he saw a lady of confidence. A respected leader standing firm in the Lord. He saw an example of what true faith was and how it was supposed to be carried out. He saw somebody he could learn from spiritually. So again, I ask you to evaluate yourselves. When can someone learn from you spiritually? Can you encourage someone? Can you stand and help fight with someone? And for the Baracks out there, and it happens. It does happen. If you're facing an impossible situation, I encourage you to find somebody that you can learn from spiritually. While you continue to pray, while you continue to read the Word of God. I know the numbers may not look too good, but if you're having an issue, I urge you to commit Psalms 20, verse 7 to heart, which reads, some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we will remember the name of the Lord our God, that we have bowed down and fallen, we have risen and stand upright. I want you to be encouraged. God bless you.
Message touched me so deeply on the inside, especially as a young individual. You know, sometimes we go through things in life. I remember I went through one of the hardest times of my life, even as young as I am. You know, sometimes we hit rock bottom. We feel so like there's no hope. And the enemy comes against you. Even at my young age, I've been through some situations, but God was there in every situation of my life to bring me out. When I thought there was no hope, when I thought there was no way out, God brought me through some things. Our life here is temporary and we don't have but so much time. But the time that God gives us, you know, we should spend that time truthfully and faithfully, giving our all to God. Because, you know, all things are for His glory. Beautiful word. Thank you, Lord. Thanks. Okay. The next portion of our service involves the speaker's offering. If the deaconess could come forward and allow us to continue with the service. Yes, Lord.
And I say that to say this to all the women, since this is Women's Day. The key to effectiveness is your commitment and your walk with God. The key to your effectiveness is your commitment and your walk with God. And everybody, when you stand on your feet,